Hey, so I wanted for people who are considering working with me long term to just get a glimpse into some of the energy, some of the structure, some of the gifts that are involved in this work, because you and I have been working together for pretty much a year. And I remember that when we started, there were two things. One was you were about to get into this new venture and this new workspace, and just you had already just started, and it was like a loss, and like you were fully immersed in that, and you wanted to be able to just give your most, be your most present, like show up as your best professional, energized, creative self. And there was this other tangent of like you being in a relationship that required you to really show up for your partner, for your then partner who was moving through some challenges. And I was like, yes, this is exactly it. This is the work of really tapping into that deeper emotional ease in you, filling your cup to the brim, like learning what that means, even like really learning what that means. Like, what does it mean to choose in a way that's constantly replenishing you? And then being able to just shine in this very balanced, graceful, tender, but also like fierce and sharp kind of self. And then what has transpired since has just been like miraculous in terms of your energetic upgrades, your experience of life, your aliveness. And I'll let you speak to this, but it's not just an emotional thing. It's not just a mental thing. It's not just a relational thing. It's not just a physical thing. It's not just a familial thing. It literally covers every single aspect of your life altogether, which is like, this is like extraordinary. But like maybe you can speak to it a little bit.
Yeah. So I feel like one of the biggest pieces when we were working together was how I was moving through things versus what. And I think that was one of the first things with approaching work. It was less about what was I doing, but what was the energy that I was bringing to it and the easefulness throughout my day. And I found myself, and that started kind of like at the more like high level surfacey things of like how I'm setting up my day, how I'm starting my day, what am I doing in the morning? Am I doing my breath work? And then slowly moving into, making myself breakfast and going for a walk. And then over time, it started getting more and more subtle of like, okay, what are the thoughts that I'm bringing? How does my body feel when I'm doing these things? What do I really actually want to be doing in this moment? How do I want to approach this energetically? And so I feel like the how is a big component that started flowing throughout, my day, and then the decisions I was making, how I wanted to be spending my time. And yeah, it was pretty wild, like how much that shifted. Truly my energy of like feeling more alive during the day, not feeling so tired. Obviously, I was drinking my tea, sip, 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 keeping myself nice and cool. And so like the herbs and sort of the other practices that we were doing too were supporting that component of doing things on a physical level, but then also changing energetically how I was approaching things. Really just brought like my shoulders literally would drop. So like I didn't realize how up here they were for so long, but it wasn't until you were like, spend 5 minutes laying in bed, because I was like, I don't even know if I can get up yet. I'm just going to lay here and just body scan and just notice and just feel what's in your body. And I think that was one of the first practices you gave me. And that was just like completely magical, because I had not realized how heady I had been and detached from how I was moving through things. It was very like, what am I doing? Blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
But then focusing in and starting with that practice of just like, what is going on in here? How am I feeling? Where's the tension? Like, is my heart rate elevated? What are the thoughts that are kind of going through, and just actually starting to attune and come back in was like, oh, wow. Because now I can move from a place of what I'm actually feeling and wanting to do versus a very heady, what should I be doing kind of state of mind.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of, especially, people like you who are ambitious and successful and driven and motivated and like so brilliant and have clear like mission, like this is what I want to achieve and do and bring to the world. We've learned it very much in this action, intellectual headspace process, and it's taken us really far and it's brought us like to where we're at. But then there comes a point where you're like, I'm feeling exhausted internally, or I'm in this relationship that's just out of alignment. Like, how did this happen? Or I feel like I don't have time for my family. When I'm with them, I'm on edge. Like these subtle experiences that, you'd want to be just like joyful and pleasureful feel very constricted and tight. And that's when it's like, okay, we're actually going to learn how to use that intelligence, but really orient it inward so that replenishing the body, nourishing the body, learn how to, when it's appropriate to drop away from it, when it's appropriate to say, we don't need to operate here. We can actually go deeper in and attune. And that's the practice you've been really getting so brilliant at doing, is just attunement to where you're at mentally, emotionally, energetically, physically. And then you have the awareness of what's going to bring you into balance. And when you're in that state of balance, everything else outside of you, is like, just happens effortlessly, whatever it is, like professionally, creatively, energetically, emotionally. And that's I'm glad you touched on that, which is a lot of people do work where it's a lot about the structures and like, here's the herbs and here's the routines and here's the things you got to do, but it's still very much in the head and it's physical and like, or then it's this very emotional, mental talking, but you're not supported with the actual structures that are going to help you feel safe going deeper in. And it needs to be both together, which is, I think, like you noticed where the power really is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, as you're well aware, we came in with many structures.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I really didn't think I was that off balance.
Yeah.
Like I really didn't. Like I sort of was like, I know that I've got things to work on, but like we've got a pretty solid ground here. It's like, no girl. No girl, you're like So I mean, I think talking about like letting the divine feminine energy just lead and like keeping the structures, but letting her guide, I was like, I can let her out. Like I can let her out and I can listen to her. I need to over engineer and over structure everything. It's like, and so when I started to let her be like, I'm here and I know what I want, and letting her speak to me, I was like, oh, because I can hold her and keep the structures. I know in the beginning too, I was very like, oh, I have to like completely release all of this. It was like very like one side of the spectrum to the other. And so over time, that's also been my dance of like finding that middle ground that we were even just talking about of like, getting to just like feel that and feel like the sensual, feminine, like flowy, intuitive side, but then have this like structure and like, don't fuck with me, I'm protected energy. So,
Yeah. That's
so
that. There's no way that integration is key to any type of upgrade. People want to feel motivated and performing and energized, but not get stuck in overdrive and know when to come back and land in their body and be easeful. People want to be creative and inspired and motivated, but not like lost in these like ethereal spaces, completely losing sight of ground. Like all of these extremes that we tend to swing towards, it's like actually all of them get to exist all together. They get to be in conversation. They get to be in conversation within all realms, all aspects of our life, not like in isolation. That's weird. That's an upside down. Like who made that up? Like we're a cohesive whole, like whole ecosystem. And yeah, I mean, I know we're coming to time, but maybe just a couple of closing words for someone who might be on the edge of partnering with me and they're like, oh, do I need this? Is this for me? Is this worth it? Like, is this person, like, is Niv the person for me? What would you say?
I would say Niv is the bomb. Niv is the best. But I say that because like working with you, it's clear, like you met me exactly where I was at. And I think you also you are very intuitive and knew well before I knew kind of how to guide me through things. And I think not only just guiding me through it, but then also when I felt like I was looping back, I felt very safe with you to be kind of actually really messy and like messing up and like letting these parts out that I was judging myself for, where I was like, ooh, she's kind of, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to show up. And I felt like throughout that whole process, you really held me as all of those parts so that like I'd cycle back a little bit, but then it kept spiraling. You kept guiding me in the direction that I also wanted to go. And so, yeah, I feel like that's just such a unique and special experience that I haven't experienced with someone else, where I truly get to be messy, non-judgmental, but still you created that container to help continue moving me in the way that I wanted to be moving. So yeah, I would say, like I said, Niv is the bomb, but that's why she's the bomb.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I'm so glad you mentioned that messiness that is allowed here. It's not possible. Nothing is possible if we're going to shut off parts of ourselves, if we're going to hide parts of ourselves. And maybe a huge part of this work is the fact that you get to reveal all of you, parts you didn't even know you were hiding. But when there's an opportunity to like bring yourself and be seen and be loved and be heard, but then also be met with intelligence, it's like the body's like, oh my God, I get this. This is possible for me. Like, here we are. This is me. And it's your willingness as well to be so raw and be so vulnerable that really catapulted some shifts, where I remember there were times like week after week, I was like, oh, we're operating on a different level now. We're like, oh, new timeline. And then let's integrate, let's land, let's like not get too carried away and remember how we got here and be here and be paused here. And then there'd be a moment again where something's like surging through, wanting to show itself. And it's fantastic. It's just fantastic, you know?
Yeah. Truly. Yeah. No, don't even second guess it. I'm like, you just got to do it. Because I didn't know what I was in for. I did not know what I was in for. And it was like the most beautiful blessing ever. So.
Love it. Love you. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn off the recording now and then say bye.